The story of Jed Clampett begins in the humble hills, where he lived as a simple man with his family, a mountaineer whose days were spent in the quiet pursuit of survival. He was a man of the earth, content with the modest rhythms of nature, and his days were marked by the sunrise and the setting sun. One afternoon, while Jed was out hunting to provide a meal for his kinfolk, a sudden, unexpected sound erupted from the earth beneath his feet. It was not a mountain tremor or a wild animal, but a mysterious, dark fluid that bubbled up through the ground, coating the forest floor in a thick, slick substance. Jed looked at the black liquid with the steady gaze of a man who had seen many things, but never this. He soon learned that this was oil, the black gold, the fabled treasure of the earth that men would travel across continents to find. With the discovery of this bounty, Jed became a wealthy man in a single stroke, a development that brought the curiosity of his extended kinfolk, who urged him to leave the quiet mountains behind. They spoke of California, of the glamour of the city, and of the promise of a life filled with luxuries he had never known. Jed, a man of simple needs, finally agreed to their urging. They loaded up the old, familiar truck, piling their belongings high, and set off on a long journey that would change their lives forever. They moved to Beverly Hills, a place that, in their minds, was synonymous with swimming pools and the radiant glow of movie stars. It was a new world, one that felt like a dream, yet one they navigated with the same calm and steady hearts they had always carried. Yet, even in the heart of wealth, the Clampetts remained who they were, often finding themselves at odds with the frantic pace of their new surroundings. There were times, however, when the challenges of this new life felt overwhelming. Jed remembered the miserable nights spent under the open sky, an experience that reminded him of the fragility of comfort. One particularly difficult night had been spent on the beach, where the relentless tide and the encroaching cold made for a night of profound discomfort. It was a humbling experience, one that underscored the reality that wealth was no shield against the whims of the elements. As they looked toward the long drive home, there was a shared understanding that some things were best left behind in the memory of the past, not to be rehashed or dwelled upon. In the midst of these adjustments, the family found themselves entangled in a peculiar situation involving something called the Island of Grunt. It was a concept that had been fabricated by the banker, Mr. Drysdale, to manipulate his clients, a clever scheme to keep their money firmly within the walls of his bank. This led to a series of encounters involving a group of women who called themselves the Girls from Grunt. They were a spirited group, dedicated to the cause of fairness and better working conditions, and they found in the Clampetts a rare sense of empathy. Jed, always a man of principle, observed these events with a critical eye. He could not reconcile the harsh treatment these women received from Mr. Drysdale with his own belief in human decency. He saw the Girls from Grunt as people, not as pawns in a banking strategy. When he encountered them, he offered them a kindness that was entirely foreign to their experience with the bank. He welcomed them, telling them that if the conditions at the bank became too difficult, they were welcome at his home, a place he described as safe and spacious. The conflict reached a peak when the girls, led by Miss Hathaway, decided they would no longer endure the treatment of Mr. Drysdale. They arrived at the mansion, their presence a testament to their resolve. Jed listened to their stories, his calm demeanor providing a stark contrast to the agitated state of the others. He felt the weight of their grievances and understood that, regardless of the complexity of the situation, the fundamental issue was one of respect and fair treatment. Granny, with her sharp wit and protective nature, was equally moved. She viewed the situation through a lens of common sense, seeing the absurdity of locking people away in a bank vault or treating them as prisoners of war. To her, the idea that a person could be a prisoner within the walls of a place built for commerce was ridiculous, and she did not hesitate to voice her disapproval of Mr. Drysdale and his methods. As the situation evolved, the lines between the groups began to blur. Mr. Drysdale, in his desperation to maintain his position, attempted to deflect the truth, claiming he was a man of fairness and honesty. But his actions spoke otherwise. His attempts to discredit the women, to label them as subversive or dangerous, only served to highlight his own insecurity. Jed, ever the mediator, sought to understand the truth behind the chaos, refusing to be swayed by the loud accusations or the defensive posturing of the banker. One of the most notable aspects of this entire ordeal was the presence of the so-called Gruntmobile, a vehicle that became a symbol of the struggle. It was an odd machine, one that the girls had claimed and modified to suit their needs. When Mr. Drysdale tried to seize it, he only further alienated himself from the very people he hoped to impress. The vehicle itself became a point of contention, yet it was ultimately just a tool, a means for the girls to assert their identity and their presence in a world that sought to silence them. Throughout these events, Jethro, with his youthful energy and often confused perspective, provided moments of levity. His fascination with the girls and his genuine desire to help often led to comical misunderstandings. He was a boy caught between the traditions of his family and the allure of the strange new world he now inhabited. His innocence, though sometimes frustrating to his elders, was a reminder of the simpler times they had left behind. As the tension finally began to subside, it was clear that the struggle had brought about a change. The girls from Grunt, having found a voice, were no longer the passive participants in Mr. Drysdale's games. They had stood their ground, and in doing so, had earned a measure of respect that could not be taken away. Mr. Drysdale, humbled by the turn of events and the persistence of his own staff, found himself forced to reconsider his approach to leadership and to the people who made his bank function. Jed watched the sunset over his new home, reflecting on the long road that had brought him from the mountains to this place of comfort. He had learned that wealth did not change the nature of a man, nor did it simplify the complexities of human relationships. The challenges of his new life were different from those of the past, but the core values of honesty, kindness, and fairness remained the same. He had stood by those who were treated unfairly, and he had done so with the same integrity that had defined his life in the hills. The family remained together, a unit forged in the mountains and tempered by the experiences of the city. They were the Beverly Hillbillies, a name given in jest, but one they carried with a quiet, unassuming dignity. As they looked toward the future, there was a sense of peace that had been absent during the height of the conflict. They knew that whatever challenges lay ahead, they would face them together, just as they had always done. The story of Jed Clampett was not one of riches alone, but one of the enduring strength of family and the importance of holding on to one's humanity in an ever-changing world. It was a story of a man who, no matter how far he traveled or how much his circumstances changed, never lost sight of the simple truths that had made him the man he was, a man of heart, a man of patience, and a man who always chose the path of kindness. And so, the days passed, marked by the steady, calm rhythm of the Clampetts, a life lived with a sense of purpose and a commitment to the values they held dear, regardless of the challenges that came their way.